Alright, so take a minute now to take apart the darts from your front and back draft. And then we're going to press these on a low setting with no steam. We want to get these all nice and flat and perfect and clean to get ready to now start walking our sleeve and checking that everything fits together. At this stage now, we have our front and our back bodice, as well as our sleeve rough draft. On the sleeve, if you remember, there's the back part of the sleeve that will sew to this armhole, and the front part of the sleeve that will sew to this armhole. So far on our bodice pieces, we have 1-inch seam allowance everywhere, but on this new sleeve draft, there's 0 seam allowance. Before we add seam allowance to this, a couple things we're going to do is we want to make sure that this sleeve matches perfectly into the bodice, and we're also going to add an elbow dart in here so it's a fitted, tailored sleeve. The tools that you'll be needing for this lesson are going to be your front and back bodice, as well as your rough draft from the sleeve. You're going to want your bendable ruler, your clear sewing ruler, French curve, eraser, a pencil, and 3 different color pencils. I'm going to be using blue, green, as well as red, some paper scissors, and a pencil sharpener. Along with your regular tools, we're also going to need something that's round that you can roll and draw on the side of it, and then a couple scrap pieces of paper. Now we have our completed front and back bodice as well as our sleeve rough draft. We need to make sure that when we sew this sleeve onto this bodice that these match. The way to do that is we're going to walk the sleeve to match back to the bodices. As a beginner in pattern making class, learning how to walk is very important. So what we're going to do is take out a long scrap of paper and a short one to where we can trace off this circle. So carefully trace off the circle and make sure your pencil is right up against it so that the circle you just drew is exactly the same size as this circle here. Then what we're going to do is we're going to carefully cut this out perfectly right along your pencil line. And then come back and double check and make sure that it's the exact same size as your circle and you didn't make it any bigger or any smaller. Also on our circle here, we're going to put a dash in here just like we're doing a notch for a pattern piece. So then you have a starting point on the circle itself. And what I'll do for the video is I'll just make it in red and a little bit bigger so it's easy for you to see. The next thing we want to do is I want to have this circle start here at the starting point, and I'm going to have it roll along this line all the way back to the starting point again, and I'll make a mark. And this is what we call walking. Once you get to this end, put a light mark on here and then walk it again to double check your measurement. As I'm walking the edge of my pattern piece, I can only go so far. If I go too far, it's going to cut below the line. And you don't want to do that. So you always have to make sure that you're walking and staying right on the line. And as it closes, you come over here to where it closes, and then you can continue walking on. If your measurement is slightly different, go ahead and put a mark there, and hopefully they're super close together. That means basically you've done it correctly. For me, it ended up right on the same spot. Now, to check if you've measured this correctly, basically you can take the round thing that you used for the measurement and you could put a mark on there. If this is something important that you don't want to draw on, you can always put a piece of tape on there and then just draw on the tape, and then later on you can peel the tape off. But what we're going to do is, with that mark, you're going to have it start at the starting point and then let this tape roll along without pushing it all the way to the other side. And you should find that the mark here matches the mark right there. And that's if you've measured it correctly. And this is called walking. If you're having trouble doing this, you need to practice this, because we're about to walk our sleeve back to our bodice. And if you're doing this incorrectly right now, all of your results are going to be incorrect on the bodice. So keep practicing this until you get it right. Now, once you've walked it out to this location a couple times and you're finding that you're hitting the same spot every time, put a circle on there and a happy face. And then take a picture of this to show me that you have done this part of the project. Now that you've learned how to correctly walk a pattern piece, what we're going to do is we're going to walk our sleeve to our bodices. Now this sleeve armhole here will need to sew into this armhole seam here as well as this seam right here. And what we need to do is we need to make sure that the distance from here to here is the same as this, and the distance from here to here is the same as that. Now, to get ready for shooting this video, what I've done is I already did a sleeve draft, and I found out some issues with that sleeve draft. I went in and I fixed those. I updated the measurements. So then now, doing the sleeve draft with you, we have all the correct measurements, so I'm helping you skip all the problem-solving steps. Something else that I noticed was when I walked the back sleeve and the front sleeve to the bodices, I noticed that this back armhole is just 1/16 too long. Now remember when we were making the bodices and we were truing everything up, and we were making sure that the back armhole was exactly 1/2 of an inch total longer than the front. Where's my paper? So if you recall, we had a piece of paper. We measured the front armhole, the back armhole, and we measured out 8 14/16 to find the front, and we measured out 9 4/16 to find the back. And this is when I discovered that the back armhole was a little bit short and I needed to add 1/16 to the back armhole. So that was the last thing I did on the truing video, was adding that 16th inside of here. Now, having the back 1/2 inch longer than the front is a standard. That's a beginning. It's like a starting point. Now that we've drafted a sleeve to match and I've walked a sleeve, I want to make sure that the sleeve itself has built-in ease, and when I split that ease in half, that the notch will make the sleeve 1/4 of an inch forward from the center. Now I'm going to show you how to find all of this, but one of the most important things is I discovered something here, which was that 16th I added to the back sleeve. We need to take that back out, so this should total 9 4/16 on the back and leave the front exactly how it is. Now, since I'm not able to check your sleeves with you in person, what I'm going to need you to do is I'll need you to make sure that your measurements are exactly the same as my measurements before we move on to the next step. Let's take a look here at your front. So take out your front armhole as well as your French curve and your bendable measuring tape. And what we're going to do is, starting with 0 here at the shoulder, we're going to pre-bend this ruler and then I want to come in here and double check the measurement of this armhole. That is exactly 8 14/16. Now let's move over to the back pattern piece. Go ahead and have your ruler 0 up here at the shoulder. You can use your French curve to pre-bend your ruler. And then starting here at the shoulder, I'm going to measure all the way down to the side seam. And this should measure 9 4/16. Remember, if either of your measurements is incorrect, I need you to fix them right now. Just as a reminder, if you need to add more to your measurement, you would push this into the pattern piece more to find the measurement that you need. Bring in your French curve and you can get the new curve that'll be that measurement, and then double check it and erase any of the old lines. If you need to take away, you need it to be smaller, then pull the ruler this direction, making the measurement smaller, and then find that curve, redraw your curve, erase the old curve, and double check your measurement. So again, when you're finished, the back armhole should measure 9 4/16. The front armhole will measure 8 14/16. And if I measure that out here on a straight line, then I will find that the back is going to be 1/16 less than half of an inch, and that's okay. The reason it's okay is because the back is longer than the front. This is a size 4. It's a custom draft for a custom client. I know I love the position of the shoulders, the side seam. The side seam's perfectly straight up and down. And then now at this point, I'm going to show you how to walk the armhole and find the shoulder notch, and the shoulder notch should be 1/4 of an inch in front of center. And all of those things match up perfectly if you have the same measurements to start with. Now for my back pattern piece, what I've done is I have the armhole so it's facing towards me, and I've taped it on the table so that this won't move. And then here's my sleeve pattern piece. So this is the back bodice, this is the back of the sleeve. Remembering that there's no seam allowance on this sleeve, so we're going to walk the edge of this sleeve to that seam on your armhole. Another thing that we're going to do is, this is the right side of the sleeve and the right side of the bodice, and we need to walk them right sides together. So you're going to want to take your sleeve and turn it over and match your back along with this armhole. If it helps, what you can do is you can make sure that this is the back, turn this over, and write BK on here. And then the other side, you could put FT for front, and then just make sure, yes, that's the front, that's the front. So now with your sleeve right sides together to the bodice, We're going to start here at the bottom of the armhole at the side seam. This is the bottom of the bell shape at the under seam. And you're going to match up the under seam and the side seam right at the edge of this sleeve. Then watch me, and what I'll do is I'll start to walk my sleeve. Now once I get to the shoulder seam of the bodice, I want to mark the shoulder seam here onto the back side of my sleeve. And then I'm going to go ahead and walk this a second time. Now that I found the location for the back, what I want to do is I want to mark this BK for the back. And I'm going to draw a line following part of that curve. And I'll put an arrowhead coming right to that mark. So this is an easy way now for me to see that I've walked my back pattern piece and it came right up to this mark right here. Now we're going to do this same thing and we're going to walk the front pattern piece. Now working with the front pattern piece, I have the armhole so it's facing towards me. Now this armhole, again, I need you to make sure that your measurement is the same as mine, so during the video we'll have the same results. This should measure 8 14/16. So take out your bendable ruler, have 0 up here at the shoulder, get the curve of your armhole, and let's go ahead and shape our bendable ruler. Then you can come in here and starting from the shoulder, measure the armhole all the way down to the side seam. And it's 8 14/16, so you can go 8 1/2, which is 8/16, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14/16. Again, if yours is too short, push the ruler in to make it longer, change the shaping. If it's too long, pull the ruler out and change the shaping. Fix this until you have exactly 8 14/16. Now here's my sleeve right side up. This is the front panel of the sleeve. This is the front of my bodice. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my sleeve and put it right sides together with the bodice. So this is the right side of the sleeve, the right side of the bodice. The side seam here is going to match up with the under seam here. And I'm going to start perfectly right at this corner. Once I get to the top, here's the shoulder from the bodice coming up right here. Then I can come around, I can write FT for front, and I'll also put a line following the front curve and an arrowhead going right to that notch. Okay, so let's take a closer look here at the results we got on our sleeve. Now when I walked the front edge of the sleeve up to here and the back edge of the sleeve up to here, there's still a space left behind. And this is good. This space right here is ease. So down below here, let's write the word ease. And we're going to come in here and we're going to measure. So I'm going to measure how much this space is, and you'll see here I have 1/2 inch. So here where we wrote ease, we can write 1/2 inch for ease. Now having 1/2 inch of ease on a fitted sleeve is great. We want to have this extra ease built into the sleeve. If your sleeve does not have 1/2 inch, but you had something really close to that, like for instance 3/8 or 5/8, then you're okay, don't worry about it. If you had a smaller measurement, like a 1/4 inch ease or even 0, then you made a mistake somewhere. Potentially when you measured the bicep line, the width up here, you might have measured it too small. Or when we did the cap height, which was 6 1/8, you might have measured that too short. Also, when we were doing, we found the fold between the cap line and the bicep line, and then we measured up 3/4, and from here we came in 1 inch, and we put in a guideline for our curve. You might have done that incorrectly as well. So these different results are, if you had made a mistake somewhere in there, then your ease amount will probably be different than mine. So if you can, go back and figure out what you did wrong. Again, if you're 3/8 or 5/8 or 1/2, then everything is good to go. Now for this video, I'm giving you all the correct measurements, so then your sleeve will perfectly fit back to your size 4 draft that we did together also. Later on, when you start to do custom work and you're doing the sleeve yourself, you might have issues where you need to slash and spread and add some more volume to the sleeve. So for instance, if you had 0 ease, you need to add more ease to it. So I have a whole nother video on doing the custom sleeve, and it teaches you how to slash and spread or slash and close to take away too much ease inside that video. So that's a completely different video, and that would be if you're doing this for a second and third time and doing your own custom work. Now when you're sewing this set-in sleeve back to the bodice itself, the center of the sleeve does not match up with the shoulders. The notch for the sleeve itself is actually a 1/4 inch forward from the center of the sleeve. So locate the center of the sleeve, and this is the front, and we want to move 1/4 inch towards the front. Again, so the notch is 1/4 inch going towards the front of the sleeve. Now something that we need to check is on the back side of the pattern piece. Remember we had the back and the front, and there was that 1/2 inch extra ease. We need to find the middle of that. So for instance, on mine it was 1/2 inch. The middle of it is 1/4 on both sides. If yours was 3/8 or 5/8, just find the middle of what yours is. Then when I compare this back to the front, it should be at the same location as the notch itself. So then we know that our pattern is totally balanced and the notch is in the correct location according to the ease that's built in to the sleeve. So when you put the shoulders together on your bodice and you sew the sleeve up into here, the sleeve will actually slightly tilt forward. One other thing that we're going to do to help with the bend in your arm is we're going to add an elbow dart here. So two things are going on here with the sleeve. Because we move the sleeve notch forward 1/4 inch, and we're matching that up here at the shoulder. What it's doing is it's just pivoting the sleeve slightly to tilt forward. And you can see here, this is the center of the sleeve, which is also the grain line. And then we have the elbow dart in here. So between the notch and the elbow dart, the sleeve itself wants to tilt forward a little bit and your arm is relaxed in that position. When you come down into the side seam though, it's going to still stay exactly where it is, and your front notch as well as your back notch, everything there stays perfect where it is. It's just up here in the cap area that gets that little bit of a shift. For those of you who are following along in my class, take a photo of this so I can see that you've walked the front and the back and you had ease in this area, and also that you found a notch for the middle of that ease. Okay, so taking a look at your sleeve here, going along the underseams, it's a totally straight line, as well as at the wrist level, this is just squared off. The next thing we need to do with this is adding this elbow dart. You can see here on this finished sleeve sloper that we have the elbow dart here, and then the underseam goes at an angle here and here, and now the wrist is a curve going around your wrist area. So let's go ahead and we're going to get our elbow dart here on our sloper. So let's take a closer look here at the elbow line and take out your green color pencil. What we're going to do is here where the elbow line crosses the center front, we're going to make a green dot right there. And put a piece of tape right on top of that. Now what we're going to do is, starting here at the wrist, we're going to cut along the center of the sleeve and make sure you stop right before you get to that green dot. Now following along the elbow line here at the underseam of the back of the pattern piece, we're going to also cut along the elbow line and make sure you stop right as you get to that green dot. So if you stop right before you get to that green dot from both the elbow line and the center of the sleeve, you can see now that we can pivot this and we can open up an elbow dart. Let's go ahead and turn this pattern piece so this elbow dart is facing towards us. So we want to add to this elbow and we need to put a piece of paper in there. So take out a scrap piece of paper and cut out a long triangle shape. And if you're using the dotted matrix paper, turn it over so it's just the white side facing up. And let's slide it here under the elbow line. And we're taping the paper to the elbow line of the main part of the pattern piece. Following along the underarm seam, what we're going to do is, starting from the elbow line, we're going to measure down 3/8 of an inch. Then I can pivot this panel so this other side of the elbow line will come down here and also meet right at that 3/8. Now I can tape this in place and we'll have our new elbow dart opening. And then down here at the wrist area, what I want to do is I want to have the pattern piece underlap underneath the sleeve here. So again, we open up the dart 3/8 of an inch for this size 4. This pattern piece here is going underneath the main pattern. So now you can see that your center of the sleeve line is still right here in place. If there's any other pattern of your pattern piece that's sticking up, go ahead and let's tape that down right now. And darken in the center of the sleeve. Now over here on the elbow dart, if there's any other paper still sticking up, let's tape that down as well. Now take a look here. This is the original elbow line right here. And this is the new dart coming down. What we want to do is we want to move our ruler down to the lower part of the dart. So this is going towards the wrist. And we're going to measure from the underarm. We're going to come in 3 1/2 inches, make a dart tip, and circle it. So again, that's following the lower part of the elbow dart. Now we can take this dart tip and we're going to connect it back here to the original elbow line. And now we have the shaping for our elbow dart. Now taking another look at this, you can see that the elbow dart is here on the back side of the sleeve. The center of the line comes down to the wrist level. The wrist is now starting to take somewhat of a curve. And you're going to notice that the back wrist width is shorter and the front wrist width is wider, and that's okay. Don't worry about that. Come over here to this paper that we taped on for the elbow dart. And if there's anything extra, go ahead and trim that away. And then just tape it in a few places so nothing moves. You don't have to make this too perfect because eventually we're going to transfer this to a new piece of paper and do some more truing, and we're going to add seam allowance. So this is good enough for now. What we'll do here on our elbow dart is you could finish drawing the underarm seam coming from the upper part of the pattern piece, and we can cut off this extra piece of paper. And then later on, when we transfer this to a new piece of paper and we add all our seam allowance, we're going to true up the elbow dart and we'll get our dart shaping later. Go ahead and sharpen your blue color pencil. And what we're going to do is right here for the center of the sleeve. Remember, this is where it was folded. We're going to go ahead and color that in blue. All the way through the pattern piece. And down at the bottom, add your arrowhead for the grain line, as well as up here at the top. And then I don't want you to lose track of this notch, which is a 1/4 inch forward of the center of the sleeve. So just put that in green so we don't lose track of that. Now come in here to the bicep line and let's color this in blue. As well as the elbow line going all the way across. And make sure that you're not trying to follow the bottom of the elbow dart, because that's incorrect. It's the upper part right here. And for the elbow dart itself, let's go ahead and make that in green. And circle the dart tip in green as well. Now I want to label my pattern piece, but I want to make sure it's following the same flow as my front and back bodice. So if I bring all three of these together, here's center front, here's center back. This is the grain lines of the bodice pieces. This is the grain line for my sleeve. And I can see here, if I were to turn like this, this is where I labeled front basic of bodice, first draft. Let's do the same thing here. So I'm going to come up to my sleeve, and I'm going to label this front basic sleeve, and then in parentheses I'll do first draft and I'll also put in today's date. What is today's date? And remembering that I'm leaving room below this if I need to write like my client's name or anything like that. And then when I come over here, so here's where I wrote the information, then I put size 4, same thing here. So here's the information, I'll come over here and I'll put a big giant size 4. So go ahead and take a picture of this and submit this to me as part of the assignment for completing this video.